What's good, everyone? Matt here from UK Nets Fans, and I'm joined by Aidan McConaughey and Cammy Anderson for another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. Today is Wednesday, the 1st of February, and today we're chatting about James Harden staying put with this Nets team, KD claiming the All-Star captaincy, recapping games against the Lakers, Nuggets, and Warriors, and much, much more besides. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets Fans, the pod itself on Twitter at BK2UK Pod, and check us out on YouTube where you can watch back all of our episodes. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Now, we've spent the last couple of episodes chatting about James Harden and his potential trade to the Philadelphia 76ers. We spoke at length last week about, it coming out that the taxes are too high in New York. It's too cold in New York, and he's frustrated with this, that, and the other. But a tweet from Woj this Thursday said, ESPN sources, the Brooklyn Nets won't listen to trade deadline overtures for James Harden, a resolve largely rooted in the all-NBA guard's repeated insistences to ownership and management that he's committed to the franchise. Welcome news, I think, for all Nets fans. Gents, do you think this is going to put it to bed once and for all?
Probably not, but for now, at least, it's nice to have a bit of good news, considering that there probably has been some people out there that have been slightly concerned by this stuff they've read about James Harden recently. Obviously, he's only been in net for just over a year now, so it's disappointing when you do read stories that he may be considering leaving, but we've always said in this pod, as soon as Woj comes out and says something like this, that's what you have to take as the truth, because he is the number one guy when it comes to sources in the NBA. And if you kind of dig deep into what he said, obviously he's saying that the Nets won't listen to any trade deadline kind of discussions for James Harden. It's probably a given when you think about it. It doesn't really make sense for the Nets to trade James Harden right now when obviously they've already kind of set their plans for winning this year around this big three of Harden, Kyrie and Kevin Durant. But at the same time as well, it doesn't make sense for Philly to make a move now as well. Their Ben Simmons situation isn't resolved yet. They may have to do something with that to make some sort of move for James Harden if they were to do that in the summer. But personally, I think you can take this as good news because I think Harden does want to be here. Obviously, he said to the Nets that he does want to be here, but it all depends on if we win. And I think that's quite fair from James Harden. I think you can't just expect him to re-sign here. He's wanting to win that ring. That's why he came here in the first place. It wasn't the allure of being in New York. It was about winning a ring. That's always been the situation for James Harden. So if they don't win here, then yeah, I don't think I can blame him for wanting to explore his options. But for now, obviously, we're in a situation where we should be getting our full team back after the All-Star break, and it's all going to be out going on and winning. And you have to think, if that's the case, then James Harden's not going to want to go anywhere because they'll be definitely wanting to repeat it again next year. So yeah, good news obviously to see that the Nets and Harden seem to be pretty comfortable in their situation, but yeah, I think it's probably far from over.
This is certainly very welcome news. Obviously, the rumours of the past weeks were that he was open to relocation and just kind of tons of rumours were floating around. But the fact he's told Nets kind of staff, the officials at the team that I want to stay, that's music to my ears. That is really reassuring. Even if, like Aidan says, it is kind of hinging on us winning. I'm curious to see how far and how much kind of wiggle room there is in that, because considering Harden's first season with us, granted he joined midway through, things kind of collapsed due to injuries. This year, we've had next to no luck at all. Kyrie's been part-time, KD's injured, Harden's had his troubles. And obviously we're on a bit of a rut of form and we're kind of slipping down the standings. And whilst I don't think we're going to slide out the playoffs and miss them entirely, I don't know if Harden's kind of said that as a threat, as in we've got to do it this year or it's not happening, maybe force the Nets into making some deadline moves on the incoming front. But yeah, I'd like to hope that he at least gives it until, say, the end of next year, where hopefully we get that full clean team. There's not really been a full strength Nets team on the court for God knows how long. at least for an extended period of time. So let's just hope that changes. We can keep Harden happy. And I mean, the Sixers, they're going to continue planting stuff. We know that. And I think throughout the week, I'd seen a few suggestions that it might actually lead to an investigation. Like I think it was Aidan had suggested, maybe tampering on their part. They might cool a little bit. And then after the deadlines happen, maybe kind of just plant a wee few seeds here and there. But yeah, all going well. Harden's on next season, and we win the championship this year and next. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's a funny one about the tampering. I really want to get more of a sort of dig a bit deeper into it, because I don't know the exact rules about like leaking stuff to the media, and if it's not a player doing it, it's some like sort of anonymous sources. It might get a bit muddy, but Draymond Green can go on TV and say that, what was it, Devin Booker needs some help, or it was someone, and he got absolutely battered for it. And then, we can have an orchestrated and finely conducted sort of media attack saying that, purposely trying to dislodge James Harden from this Nets team. And, it's seemingly fine. Obviously, great news that it's come through that he is committed to this team. I believe he's committed to this team, as we've gone on before saying, if he wants to win, then, what better place than with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, as you have both said. This isn't the team he signed up for, which might have led to some sort of pains on his end. He's spent practically all of his bulk of his career as a one-man band in Houston. And, maybe he came to Brooklyn to share the limelight and, share the load and all this kind of stuff. All of a sudden, Kyrie can't play half the games. KD goes down. Joe Harris isn't here. And all of a sudden, he's got to make do with, Patty Mills and LaMarcus Aldridge, who are great pieces, but aren't KD and aren't Kyrie Irving. So maybe that's annoyed him a little bit, but still, where else are you going to go? Like to be at this level for the next few years, for the rest of their prime? I just don't see it. So hopefully it'll be put to bed. I think you're right. It ain't the end of it. That was probably just a bit of wishful thinking. But yeah, nice to see him at least committing. The Nets have said he's committed through Woj, so that's kind of the best we can hope for. But I guess we won't know until the end of a little further on into this month with the end of the trade deadline. Thanks to everyone coming through on the chat so far. The Boston Brick coming through saying, let's go Celtics. Nathan, I love you to pieces, but keep that trash out of my comments box. We need some Nets fans in here to balance that out, I think. So come hit us up on Twitch or YouTube when we record live, and you can have your say. On to more lighthearted stuff. Kevin Durant was named Eastern Conference captain for the All-Star game. I want to say for the second year in a row. I wasn't sure if he was captain last year, but I'm pretty sure he was. I know he was definitely injured last year, which, it looks like he's going to be again for this season. Obviously, the All-Star game is on the 20th of February. KD was injured. He sprained his MCL on the 16th of Jan. So it would mean a 35-day break, or 5 weeks from the injury. And the Nets initially said he'd be out 4 to 6 weeks. So it's mathematically possible that he's going to come back for the All-Star game, but I would be shocked if he returns and puts on that, frankly, hideous All-Star uniform that has been released before he suits up with the Nets. What do you guys make of it?
I got really, really excited the second I seen that he was named captain, completely forgetting how the captains are decided in the All-Star. For those unaware, it is the best vote getters in the fan vote section in each conference. KD obviously won it for the East and LeBron for the West. And initially I was all excited thinking, yep, that's confirmation. He's going to play. He's back. KD's back. Obviously still a few weeks away from All-Star break, but it kind of had me thinking, yep, that's it confirmed. He's going to be playing. We're going to be fine. He might be back a week earlier or whatever. And then remembered why the captains are picked. So it kind of brought me down a knock or two. But yeah, obviously a good honour for KD to kind of get, if you like, clearly valued across the league, whilst maybe a bit of a divisive figure due to his kind of hopping between teams to try and win and what have you. Hopping from the Thunder to the Warriors to win, then the Warriors to the Nets to win. It's a good accolade for him. It's lovely to see a Nets player kind of get that. Obviously 2 years in a row, like you say, and yeah, let's just hope he can play as much as All-Star break, as we've said in the time we've done the podcast, is really just a bit of fun. There's not really anything to it. I wouldn't cry if he didn't play, but I mean, if he could come back and it's maybe just a light way to ease himself back into it, rather than kind of jumping right back in, because who knows what the Nets are going to, what kind of state the Nets are going to be in come 3 weeks' time, given the kind of current mess we seem to be in. But yeah, great news for KD, and obviously won't be the only net there. James Harden's also involved. So yeah, great stuff. Hopefully KD's back sooner rather than later. Just delighted that he's got this.
Yeah, obviously he's the best player in the league, so he obviously has to be the captain for whatever conference he's in at the moment. So yeah, it's extremely well deserved. I do like the way that the NBA do that, because there's probably a 99% chance that he isn't going to play in this game, but they still honour these guys. And I think they were talking about it during it was either the Lakers game or the Denver game or whatever it was, about the kind of the way it works. And there is obviously a lot of incentives in players' contracts and stuff like that if they make the All-Star team. So it is important, regardless of injury, that they do kind of respect the players that have played the best this season. And he has been in outstanding form all year, obviously, until his injury, which was just absolutely gutting, because he was probably favourite for the MVP at the time again. And obviously for Nets fans, we're starved of injury-free KD season, which kind of felt like it was going to be that way. Obviously we had the COVID blip, but funnily enough, that's 2 years in a row now where KD has went in the protocols and came back, and after a week or two he's gone down again. So obviously kind of keeping players out for that time in an NBA season can have an effect, and they can get injured, but it just wasn't meant to be at this time. And I think for what kind of injury it is for Kevin Durant, we can be quite happy that he will be back quite soon. And I don't know about other Nets fans, but I'm more than happy for him to sit out the All-Star weekend and be on the court against the Celtics on the 24th, fit and healthy. And I'd probably say the same for James Harden as well. Obviously, that hand injury doesn't seem as bad as it first seemed when we saw him coming out at the Denver game wearing a big kind of glove sort of thing. But I'd be quite happy for him to sit it out as well, and hopefully there's another further update with the whole mandate in New York at that time, and the Nets can just take that time period to get ready and attack this second half of the season after the break. So absolutely fantastic for KD, more than well deserved. I think you really enjoyed it last year, the kind of head-to-head with LeBron picking the teams, and let's just hope he picks a better team this year, because they got absolutely smashed last year, and it was very lopsided. So, no, looking forward to seeing all that kind of thing. But in terms of the game, not that interested at all.
Yeah, to be fair, I rarely watch the All-Star game. It's just obviously that it's designed to be an exhibition, but it'd be nice to. It was nice to. I'm not sure if they're doing the same sort of gimmicks that they did last year with the you got the winners of the quarters and stuff. But like you guys said, either way, I would be absolutely shocked if KD suited up. I don't think he will. But Cammy, you touched on that how the voting works. It was fan votes, player votes, and media votes, and KD claimed first place for all three ranking categories, despite being injured. Obviously, I think the voting opened around Christmas, so he's been out a wee while, and he's still finishing top of the ranks for everything. Harden, meanwhile, scored third in player votes, fourth in fan rank, and fourth in media rank for the Eastern Conference guards. So that puts him fourth if you kind of tot up his whole score in terms of Eastern Conference guards, behind DeMar DeRozan and Trae Young, who started, and Zach LaVine was the only other non-starter who scored more than James Harden. So you got to assume he's going to be involved in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, nice to have some recognition. Again, I don't care what happens as long as they come back healthy. Would be nice. But yeah, I would love us to kind of put a line after All-Star break, and KD's back. Maybe even Joe Harris is back, even though he's had a setback. Harden's got his hand rested up. The mandates change for some reason all of a sudden, and we can finally get the team we've been promised for the last year or so. But we shall see. So that's the Nets news from this week. I have actually just seen, as we've been recording, that the Nets CEO John Abamondi has resigned for mysterious circumstances. Obviously CEO of BSE Global. I guess we'll discuss that another time if it's, if anything important comes of it. But in the meantime, we have games to recap. Since we came at you last, the Nets took on the Lakers on a rematch of their Christmas Day game. And unfortunately, the Nets fell short, losing 96 to 106. Gentlemen, I'll leave this one to you. How was this game for you guys?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. We obviously went into this one not expecting very much with being at home. Obviously, we didn't have Kyrie Irving, missing KD and Joe Harris, obviously. But the day before, Anthony Davis decided that this was the game that he was going to come back. And I don't think there was much of a coincidence there after we embarrassed the Lakers on Christmas Day in their brand spanking new arena. But there was a few positives. I actually enjoyed the game for a bit, and before it kind of fell off. Obviously on Christmas Day, James Harden went off, and yet again he played really well. I thought it was incredible in this one, and he really kept the Nets in this game in the first half. He had a 33-point triple-double, which isn't easy. And it was obviously on the day that all the stuff came out about Harden and the Sixers. So how do you go out and answer kind of gossip about you? You go out and put in a performance like that. So it was really impressive that he could go out and lead the team like he did. And it wasn't just as obviously, it wasn't the best 3-point shooting night. I mean, he did hit a couple of really big threes, but he was just seemed to be making the most of his space more than he has done recently, especially with the lack of spacing that the Nets have on home nights, and he was driving really well, and he pulled off some just really incredible shots, so that was nice to see. Aside from Harden, it was a really good performance from James Johnson, who's been impressing me recently. I'm not sure about you guys, but I just wasn't that high on him for a long time, but he just seems to be finding his place in this team, and I've actually probably got him higher in a healthy Nets rotation than some of the usual suspects that you would expect to be in there. So I think Steve Nash likes him as well, so I can see him playing quite a big part going into the postseason. So yeah, I just think he's an active player, and he's been making threes. He's one of those guys that takes like 1 or 2 threes a game, but he just seems to always make them, so you can't really complain too much about that. And he seems to be a net positive most nights. So there wasn't too many kind of individual performances to sing about. As I said, Harden kind of led the way the entire time, but we kept AD to 8 points on his return when probably many assumed that he was going to go off, and we dealt with him really well. And yeah, that's about it for positives. We didn't expect too much for this one, just purely for what we were going into, and many people had it chalked down as a scheduled L, but what can you do? There was a couple of decent performances, but we were kind of never in it after the second half.
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly more negatives than there were positives in this one. The main takeaway from this one for me was that the home form continues to be poor. This result made us 12-12 on the season at home, and then also later on in the week, as we'll get on to, we fell again at home, which made us 12-13 at home. So the fact that we are unable to make the Barclays a kind of fortress is quite concerning. Obviously, you might have home kind of field or home court advantage, should I say, in basketball terms. It's not something we've made advantage of. Granted, we're without Kyrie at home, but yeah, it's just not been kind of a happy hunting ground for us. Turnovers were also a huge issue for us in this one. 19 turnovers on the night, and the Lakers got 19 points off them. So literally every time we gave the ball up, it was a point to the Lakers. And yeah, you kind of take half those turnovers, and yeah, we win the game. It's very, very frustrating. What else was wrong? Yeah, absolutely murdered in the paint. maybe murdered's putting it lightly. We were massacred. There's so many words that could be used to describe this. 46 of the Lakers' points were in the paint on a night we could just not defend the paint. There was just nothing. We could have shoved brick walls in there and we would have still got battered. It was just, certainly a night to forget. And it was also a night to forget on a 3-point shooting as well. The first half was incredibly poor, 14.9% from free, and on the game as a whole, just 25%. And I mean, that's pretty bad. It's maybe not as bad trying to be a little bit positive whilst just hammer the team with negatives. We did have a 19% 3-point night against the Magic in December. So in comparison, this is a big improvement. But really, really not good enough. You can kind of tell that confidence is lacking in this team. Shots that guys would usually take, high on confidence it would land, haven't landed because there's just, we're in a rut. The team aren't performing well. And like I think I've said for the past few weeks now, I just hope this kind of rut ends soon. We've got to get out of it or we're sliding down the standings even further.
Yes, it was a bit of a lackluster one, wasn't it? This one, annoyingly. But that took us to the following night with a game. Once you've had a lackluster loss in LA, a team that you don't want to face is the Nuggets, which is exactly who the Nets had to face the following night. But we did, again, it was one of those. Although it was a loss, it was not as bad as we thought it might be. And a depleted Nets team as it was, second night of a back-to-back, but we kept it close, which I'm taking as positive. I'm taking as somewhat of a win. A close first quarter. We managed to get a few stops early, which kind of turned into points on the other end, which we managed to get a few decent runs. And we were actually up at the half, which is quite nice. So another good start from this Nets team. Big shout out to Cam Thomas for getting his career high in points this game. He finished with 25 points, going 8 of 14 from the field, 4 of 6 from free, including a really pretty sweet behind the sort of through the legs cross dribble move with a step back free. Very, very James Harden reminiscent, which was very sweet to see. He's obviously been listening to BK2 UK because we'd said over the past couple of episodes that he's got a bit quiet and he's got a bit cold. So we're obviously the shot of adrenaline that Cam Thomas needs. So you're very welcome there, Cam. Another sort of thing a good performance I'm getting was from the vets. Putting in a shift again, doing way more than they signed up to do this year. Came to this Nets team to be sort of complementary players to the big three, but they're shouldering a lot of responsibility. I am, of course, talking about LaMarcus Aldridge, who finished with 18 points, 8 rebounds, and 1 block, and Patty Mills, 21 points, 6 assists, 3 rebounds, going 6 of 12 from the floor, 4 of 8 from free. The man continues to pick up that early season form he had. And there was a really, really tasty sequence that Mills and Blake Griffin had, where there was kind of like a dribble handoff that sort of led Blake to roll to the rim for a slam to turn back the clock, which is quite nice. It was a bit of a kind of committee performance. Obviously, I think that James Harden didn't even play this game. So kind of it was everyone else kind of stood up, and we've long said on this podcast where we'll give people a bit of a kick in, we'll give them a kick in, but when people are due praise, we'll give them their due praise. And Jevon Carter getting a bit of a run in this game, going off for 13 points, 3 assists, a steal, 4 of 8 from the field, 4 of 7 from free. And even DeAndre Bembry stuck up for Carter, saying that's what JC does. He shoots threes. He's not getting the minutes he wants, but he's confident. We need him to come in and hit those threes for us. That's his game. He's always been a good 3-point shooter if you watched his game. So maybe, putting a little bit out there to those darker, more twisted corners of Nets Twitter. that's really basically think you should swap Jevon Carter for a fax machine or whatever we might the other kind of deals that have been parlanced on Twitter. Another positive was nice to see that Demarcus Cousins got ejected. Death, taxes, and Demarcus Cousins fouling out because he's an angry young man. And yeah, it was a real nice first half, but I don't know if it was because it was kind of the back-to-back or the pace we were playing at, or the zippy ball movement just got a bit too much. But, we started getting sloppy with the fouls, a few turnovers and missing some open shots, which ultimately came home to roost in a kind of tough second half against this Nuggets team.
Yeah, it was another just a brutal night, and yeah, you mentioned it there about Harden. They only announced his hand injury just shortly before the game, and obviously everyone was concerned about his hamstring tightness. Obviously, we had so many issues with that last year, and then it kind of came out the blue that he had a scan that revealed that he'd strained his hand or whatever, which is just at the time it felt like the world was just caving in on us, because it's like, what else can they throw at us? So there was kind of a bit of a negative vibe on the game before it had even tipped off, and I don't think it was probably as bad a game as we might have thought, considering it's the first game we've had without any of the big three since the COVID outbreak. So yeah, it wasn't terrible, but there were still just signs that the Nets' depth just can't handle when those guys aren't there, and we struggle with one of them. Never mind without kind of all of them. So yeah, obviously Harden's injury doesn't seem as bad as first feared, but we did miss him in this one just because the Nets were just extremely sloppy. There were so many turnovers, just poor defending on a night where the Nuggets just weren't that good, and which is frustrating because when you play teams from the West like the Nuggets and the Lakers and whatnot, you only get the chance to play them twice a season. And yeah, they were there for the taking, and obviously we weren't kind of set out to beat them. But yeah, they just weren't that great. I mean, Jokic he was relatively quiet in the first half, and then the Nets obviously got tired, as you mentioned, with it being on a back-to-back. And then him, Will Barton, and Austin Rivers, of all people, went off in the Nets, and that was it, really. It was one of these games where you watch it. I actually stayed up to watch this one, and I just hope to see guys on the role players. Like it seemed to be one of those games where it's like these are the games where it decides who's still going to be in the rotation after the All-Star break when everyone comes back. You want to see all these guys step up and pull out a performance where on a night where they probably could have won, which does say a lot. But you want to see guys just put in that extra bit of effort just to show that they want to be in that rotation, because I certainly think there's guys that could drop out of it. Personally, I think DeAndre Bembry hasn't played well recently. I think he's dropped down quite a lot since the form that we saw him at the start. He's certainly not putting in the performances that we once seen. And guys like that, I see like their positions could be up for grabs, because they're probably going to try and cut the rotation down to 8 or 9 guys. And when you bring back in Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, James Harden's obviously coming back, and now LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be coming back as well. It's just even harder for these guys to warrant minutes, and you have to show it in games like this. But there was a few kind of good performances. Obviously, there was guys that did put in kind of good scoring numbers and things like that. But in terms of effort, there really isn't just what we've seen in previous years from the role guys in the Nets team. So it was disappointing in that aspect, but another kind of scheduled loss for what it is, because when you're without your main three, we really can't kind of complain too much about dropping these games.
Yeah, they don't get any, like, although it's a scheduled loss, it doesn't get any easier, does it? But no. Talking of scheduled losses, we rounded out the week on Saturday with another frustratingly close. We didn't really have any license to be as close as it was, really, game against the Golden State Warriors, which the Nets would lose 106-110. And, Nets Twitter was alive after this game with all kinds of craziness. But Cammy, before we dive into that, what were some positives you saw from this Warriors game?
I mean, one of the obvious positives is the scoreline. This time only 4 points off the kind of victors, and then the previous night it was a few nights before it was 8, and a few nights before that it was 10. So we're getting better. If you want to try and be really positive, like we've kind of tallied or kind of marked all these games, scheduled losses, all things considered, we done pretty well this week. Even though we lost, that sounds mental that I've even just said that, but we made a really, really significant comeback during the second, 19 points, and unfortunately in the end we just fell short in our bid to end what at the time was a 3-game losing streak, of course stretched to 4 after this loss. But I think considering we had Kyrie available and LaMarcus Aldridge went down injured pretty early on in this game, it was quite the effort from the team that was available to us. Obviously, shout out to Kyrie for what he kind of done on the court. Massively kept us in this one, dropped 32 points, and Nellak's got a triple-double, not 8 rebounds and 7 assists. And just a general shout out to Kyrie this season, just to double-check my numbers before I say them wrong. He's outperforming his career points per game as well as his rebounds per game this season, and only just performing below his career assists per game. So Kyrie is playing some of his best basketball we've seen, and he's performing better than he has on average throughout his career. So it's just like I think we'll always say until things change, it's a real shame we don't get to see this man play basketball every game that we play. Obviously a frustrating way to end the week, but I think that you can take the positives. Kyrie's still doing well, and a few other guys maybe done something in the absence of the others. But next week's a new week. I think it's just a general positive that the week's over, and we can just kind of look forward from there on out.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. There's a quote, isn't it? A good quote to always remind yourself is, "This too will end." You can say that against when it's going rough. You're saying this will end one day. The Nets will get bounced back and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, this one was, 4th loss in a row. First back-to-back road losses of the season. Obviously, something that this Nets team could hang their hat on was our stellar road record, but we've, losing 2 on the bounce, and saw the Nets slip to 6th in the standings after, flirting with 1st, 2nd all year. We've gone down to 6th. I know we're still only 2 games back or something. Obviously, we're recording this just before the Suns game. But as it stands now, we're still just 2 games back from number 1 seed. So it's all to play for in the East, but, we are 6th, and that is really quite strange. But this game pretty much came down to the 4th quarter. As you guys were saying, it was close throughout. But the main talking points of this game were really around fouls and Steve Nash choosing not to challenge those fouls, which, I think, a lot of people went bananas about, but I'm a bit more measured on it. So the first one was a foul on Kessler Edwards against Steph Curry, who Curry had been struggling all night. Was not a stellar performance from Steph Curry at all. But he did the thing that at the beginning of this season, they said that you weren't allowed to do anymore, and absolutely battered James Harden for it, where it took a month into the season before he got any foul calls whatsoever. And that was, pump faking to get your defender up in the air and then just jumping into him. So he got that, which was annoying. And, a lot of people were saying that Steve Nash should have challenged it. So basically, when asked why he didn't challenge it, Steve Nash said that he'd get in trouble if he told us the real reasons why he didn't challenge it. But essentially, he said that a little birdie told him not to challenge it. And he basically was inferring that a referee said 100% a foul. So Steve Nash thought, okay, when a referee tells you that, there's no point challenging it if you're definitely not going to win that challenge, if it's not going to get overturned, because you're going to lose a timeout. And, it's a close game. We're going down the stretch. But in my head, it's like you challenge it anyway, because even though that one ref says, 100%, refs are fallible. Like, they're not, completely right all the time, as we well know. So, had that ref seen another angle of it or seen a replay, for whatever, could have changed his mind, because it was egregious and silly. But, it's talking pessimistically, it's Steph Curry at the end of a game where it's close on his home court. And, I won't say anymore, but it's one of those things that fans talk about all the time. So that was the first one, the first crazy call that people got on everyone's back for. But, with less than a minute to play in this game, it's, a 3-point game, 104-101. Some clutch free throws from Patty Mills. The Nets are down by 1 point, 20 seconds to go. Clay hits a big three. Kyrie hits a big three. So with 10 seconds to go, it's still a 1-point game. After that, the Nets get called for a foul on Kyrie Irving on sort of against Klay Thompson, that the Nets fans as well said that Nash should have challenged. It's 5 seconds to go or something like that. But this one, I'm like, okay, guys, everyone's just still a little bit hepped up on the last coach's challenge that didn't come through, because I think that's a foul. I think, Kyrie blocked him. Even Kyrie sort of said after the game again about this foul, he said, that's got to be a foul any day of the week, any game. So sorry. So annoying. It's just one of those that, the game managed to get away from this Nets team. It's really annoying when sort of annoying fouls do kind of ruin the kind of clutch moments of the game. But, in summation, the two fouls that everyone went mental for and wanted Nash's head. One, he got told they wouldn't overturn it, and the other was a foul. So I can see where he's coming from. But yeah, I think it's just with this run of form, 4 L's on the bounce, I think Nets fans just are looking for someone to blame. Other big negatives from this game is LaMarcus Aldridge spraining his left ankle and leaving the arena on crutches. We've got no further update on that. But yeah, lads, I want to get your take on the challenges and the no calls and stuff, because I'm not actually properly caught up with you guys about it. If anyone wants to give their thoughts on that.
I went bananas. You said people were going bananas. I was certainly one of those people. I think Nash has got to use that challenge, and I think it's terrible that he didn't at least use it in one of those plays, and the fact he said that a little birdie told him not to do it. You're the head coach. It doesn't matter. You challenge that every single day. And even the Kyrie play at the end, there was different angles that made me think some referees might overturn that, just for the way that Klay Thompson went into him and he kind of initiated the contact.
He went down easy, didn't he?
Yeah, and when you initiate the contact like that, come across someone, of course your legs are going to go in front of each other, so he's going to fall. And I think Kyrie's probably seen the replay of that and thought, yeah, maybe there was contact. But again, I just think Kyrie's that type of guy where the game's over, he can move on, unlike myself, and he can just go accept it and go, well, I'm not going to kind of call out my coach and say, oh, that wasn't a foul, he should have challenged. He's not that type of guy at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think Nash needs to be more confident. And my reason at the end is that I did say kind of, well, yeah, if the challenge gets rejected, then obviously they'll lose that time out. But Klay Thompson was about to shoot 3 throws. He's not missed one since he returned. I think he's something like 50 or 50 or something like that. It's going to be a 4-point game. You might as well take the risk for the chance to get that possession and try and hit the 3. So I think it's kind of stemmed on from last year, where it kind of was Mike D'Antoni that was kind of calling the shots with telling Steve Nash, you should challenge that. And he doesn't have that birdie in his ear. Who knows who it was, if it was one of the refs or whatever. I think it probably was, because he obviously said he didn't want to get into trouble, and he probably would have got a fine if that happened. But yeah, I just think you're spot on, Matt, in terms of you can't put a loss down to 2 possessions, but that's what the challenge is there for. And yeah, it's just really frustrating because when it gets to the end of the game and you lose it like that, when we came so close, you just want to see Nash sticking up for his guys. And he done it so much as a player. He was the hard-nosed guy that'd be in everyone's face if there was any other trouble. You want to see him sticking up for the guys, because I think that is one part of Nash's game which we haven't seen too much yet. Him sticking up for his players. So yeah, it was disappointing for me, and I think he probably secretly regrets not using that challenge.
I think it maybe highlights still the fact that, well, it certainly highlights Nash is far from an experienced coach, obviously only in his second year as a coach. And yeah, considering how close the game was, you take that chance. If you can do anything to make it better for the Nets, in my opinion, you've got to. At the end of the game, he could have said something much better than what he did say. Yeah, just trying to say, like we're all kind of presuming it was the referee, or assuming, should I say. But yeah, it's just poor. Just take the chance. You lose a timeout, so what? It could have changed the game. It could have won the game. It's just, yeah, it's very poor. Hopefully he's learnt from that. It's obviously much easier for us sitting here behind television screens and laptop screens to shout at him and say, it's this, it's that. But yeah, like it's very disappointing, and hopefully, like I say, he does learn from it, and it's not something that we need to kind of go over again.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think there's been so much just like, I'm just gonna let it go now, because it can properly boil your piss, can't it? Some of the decisions that people make, but we look ahead. We look ahead to next week, and hopefully there's a W in here somewhere. But as I say, we're literally a few hours away from tipping off against the Suns. It's a 3 a.m. tip here in UK on Wednesday morning. We'll follow that up for the following day, so 24 hours later, Thursday morning, UK time, 3 a.m. against the Kings, before waiting to head on Saturday to the Jazz. That's a 2 a.m. tip on Saturday the 5th, and then another back-to-back on Sunday against the Nuggets, with the UK friendly time of an 8:30 p.m. tip. Lads, I think I went all W's last week on the BK2K pick'em, but how do you see this this upcoming week coming? Are you confident?
No. Given the kind of form that we've been in, and the fact this is another far from kind week for the Nets, it's hard to see us picking up any more than a solitary win. Now, that win, I think, is going to come against the Kings purely based on the fact they're one of the worst teams in the league, and certainly the worst team of the teams we will face this week. Surely even a depleted Nets team should manage to beat them, or at least I hope so. Really intrigued to see how Kyrie's going to do over this kind of stretch of road games. It's a real chance for him to really take over. It's quite hard to be positive. We always like to be positive on the podcast, but when the team's in the slump that we are, it's quite hard to find some confidence and hope. But yeah, let's hope that Kyrie can lead us to more than the one victory that I predict.
Yeah, it's just another difficult week. It's that old saying, when it rains, it pours. You come off kind of 4 losses and you go into a 4-game road trip in the West against 3 of the best teams in the league. Sometimes timing just doesn't benefit the Nets at all. But I guess at the same time, it's a time to go out and make a statement and show what we can do. And I do feel more confident this week than I did last week. Obviously, news have came out that Harden's probable to play tonight, which is certainly not what I was expecting. I didn't expect to see him for a week or so. So that's great news. And even though you probably assume that you'll rest in at least one of these games, Kyrie's in mid-season form already. So you've always got a chance when a guy like that's in that form. So personally, I think we're going to go 2-2. I think we win tonight, and I think we against the Suns, and I think we beat the Kings again tomorrow. And I think we'll end up dropping the last 2 games. Just want to see some improved performances. I mentioned it earlier. I think we'll begin to see a bit of a partnership with Kyrie and Harden coming back again, because they were excellent last year together, and they've not played too many games together so far, but they have looked good when they've done it. So I'd just like to see them have a stretch of games where they just ball out, the two of them in the backcourt. And just I want to see a big improvement from some of the role players, especially with Lamarcus Aldridge apparently being out until around about the All-Star break. So I'd just like to see guys like DeAndre Brembry, James Johnson, Bruce Brown, Blake Griffin step up and fill in that void that'll be left by Lamarcus Aldridge, because that is a big void, especially with scoring off the bench. So I'll go 2-2 and say that it'll be 2 wins and then 2 L's.
Nice. Big up Joel in the chat, said it could be a tense one this week. Fingers crossed for Harden. Could not agree more, mate. Yeah, I'm going to go with just the solitary win this week, even though it's going to come the day after this Suns game. I still think we're going to have enough to beat the Kings. But yeah, I think that Jazz Nuggets doubleheader at the weekend is just going to be a bit too rich for this Nets team. But yeah, I would love nothing more than to see a bit of a run of form coming on, especially with Kyrie coming, as you say, balling out. Harden, feeling it a bit more, and this weird kind of mix of vets and rooks coming together to be more than the sum of their parts would be absolutely lovely. But we shall see. That leads us on to listener questions. We got 2 to get through today. A fun one here from Ollie from our Discord. He said, if you could add one past Nets player to this roster, who would it be and why? I've kind of broken this down into 2. I've said, if fully healthy, and we've got everyone, we've got the big 3, we've got Joe Harris, give me Jarrett Allen to run the pick and roll with James Harden and to give us a little bit of rim protection. Because I think, when we've got the big 3, we don't have many sort of weaknesses, but we could always do with a bit of rim protection. So I've said Jarrett Allen, but I've also said if it's now and everyone's out and we just need something, I said, it's hard to look past Jason Kidd, someone who can run the floor, get other people involved as well, and create some offense too. So JA and J Kidd, what have you guys said?
So for Matt, I've kind of approached it similar to you, Matt, in that I had a kind of a realistic and unrealistic and just a kind of pulling on my heartstrings. The pulling on my heartstrings one was D'Lo, largely due to my fandom for him. That was the most obvious answer. But I mean, there was some reasoning behind that as well. Because I know you would probably say, I knew you were going to say that. But with Harden's kind of injury, Kai's part-time status, D'Lo could come in and control things, and he'd certainly bring an entertainment factor that seems to be lacking about this Nets team at the moment. I'd love to see Jarrett Allen as well. That's maybe my more sensible pick. Similar reasons to you, Matt. And then my kind of throwback pick, if you like, would be Drazen Petrovic. The 3-point shooting has been honking for far too long. And who better to bring in the Petrovic, who was an absolute assassin from deep. So, yeah, they'd be my kind of picks. But if I was to just pick one, it would have to be D'Lo. Don't need to explain why.
No, so I know you're a D'Lo fan, but that is a solid pick.
Yeah, I've totally on the Drazen train with you, Cammy. But yeah, and for me, as of now, we're just missing that 3-and-D wing, and as you say, our 3-point shooting's been shocking, and we just missed that one player. So yeah, give me someone like Keith Van Horn, who I think has just all the attributes that the Nets could currently do right now. Spacing's obviously a nightmare, but just a good wing scorer and a guy that can defend like Keith would be epic. But yeah, take Drazen as well. But yeah, I put a note on my notes just to say I'm just desperate for anyone who can shoot. I'd even take Alan Crabb back at this rate. So there we go.
That is a reach. I didn't think Alan Crabb would pop back up, but no, I get what you mean. Wicked shout for Keith Van Horn. And big shout to Ollie for that question. Thank you very much. And a bit of a humbler from Spike in our Discord. He says, will we be in the play-in places at the time of the All-Star break? I did a little bit of looking ahead. There are 10 games left between now and the All-Star break, with tonight's game against the Suns, then straight into game of the Kings the night after. And then, as we said, Jazz, Nuggets. And then between then and the All-Star break, we played the Celtics, Wizards, Heat, Kings again, and another back-to-back with the Knicks and the Wizards. 7 of those games are on the road, but with Kyrie not being able to play in New York, he can't play that road game against the Knicks. It's a game every other day and a couple of back-to-backs, so it could be a really pivotal time for this Nets team. And with how close things are in the East, I'd be surprised, but it's not impossible. What do you guys think?
Yeah, as soon as I saw this question, I was like, yeah, it sounds like something Spike would say, so it doesn't surprise me because he is ever the realist in the Discord. I've got a lot of love for Spike. He has some great points, but he does like bringing us back down to earth and reminding us that at the moment the Nets are playing absolutely terrible. So, yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think it is probably realistic, but I don't think we will be. I think we won't be too far off it, as you say, Matt. I don't think Charlotte have enough to get above us, even with our schedule that we've got at the moment. But if you just need to look around the schedule for the rest of the teams above us as well, and it is quite hard for everyone in the East going into the All-Star break. So, yeah, I think we're probably going to be sitting around 4th, 5th, or 6th coming into the All-Star break. If we get as high as 4th, I think everyone will be pretty delighted, to be honest. But yeah, I obviously we're not going to see Kevin Durant or Joe Harris before the break, and there's rumours that LaMarcus Aldridge won't be back before that either. He's certainly not going to be on this road trip. So yeah, I don't know. As I said, there's going to be a lot of Kyrie and Harden moments in the next few while, and hopefully that'll be enough to get us a good few wins. But yeah, a lot of pressure on James Harden and these home games, especially with LaMarcus Aldridge being out as well. So I'd expect our away form to severely outnumber our home form until we hit that break at the end of the month. So fingers crossed we're not as far down as the play-in places, because that'd be pretty miserable.
I'm going to be optimistic and saying no, we won't be in the play-in spots, although I'm the same as you, it's going to be very, very close. I'm really hoping that between now and the All-Star break, we kind of manage to find our form again. Surely the kind of poor run of form can't last, another 3 weeks? Surely not, because if that's the case, we're in some serious trouble. But let's be honest, if we're sitting in the play-in places at the All-Star break, who really cares? So long as we're in the playoffs come the end of the season, that's all that really matters. It's the table at the end of the season that counts, not the one during the season. We're still only 2 games behind East leaders Miami, despite sitting in 6th. It's quite a close conference, so you're really talking a few results in our favour and one of these guys slipping up, and we're right back in it again. Granted, that seems quite far-fetched given our current predicament, but let's not just completely put a dampener on things. Of course, didn't expect to be in this position at the start of the season. Luck certainly hasn't been on this Nets team side again, but yeah, there's still plenty of time to play overall, and I'm not really concerned where we're sitting at All-Star break. Still plenty of time to go, as I say.
Nice. Yeah, I think we all have a bit of a tendency to go, everything's rubbish and it's going to be rubbish forever. So yeah, I think a nice bit of a measured response there from Cammy. Our guys, the Only Nets Fans You Know pod, coming in clutch in the YouTube comments with a listener question. Where is Joe Harris? I'm starting to get nervous. I think we need a buyout player and or trade for reinforcements if we can. So we did chat about this last week. Obviously, we're suffering some flare-ups with his rehab. Obviously, injured his ankle in, I want to say, November. He had surgery. so which is annoying. They originally said like 4 to 8 weeks, I want to say, which would have taken us into January, but obviously had some flare-ups. And there's just, the Nets being the Nets, there's just no timeline for anyone ever, annoyingly. And if there is a timeline, you can just ignore it because it'll be a couple of extra weeks on top of that. In terms of buyouts and trades, I think I really want to wait until after the All-Star break, which I don't know if that, puts us into, too much out of time territory. We've been able to make a move before the playoffs. But I honestly think we just need health, man. We just need health. We just need everyone to get back. Obviously, Paul Millsap wants away. He's made that very clear. There are some other people that, haven't impressed this season, so could be potentially moved. Nick Claxton's getting spoken about potentially being a decent trade chip, with moves around the margins. We've got some trade exceptions we can use. So if anyone's going to be able to turn that into something that we get a return on, it's Sean Marks and his front office. So I don't think we need to. I just think we need to get healthy. But I'll be interested to see what you guys say.
Yeah, I just think. Sorry, Cammy. Yeah, I just think that we need to make a move. Personally, I think we can't rely on Joe Harris coming back, and there may not be further issues. Obviously, the last thing we kind of heard is he went for a second opinion to a doctor in Indiana, and I've seen 2 doctors on Twitter. One saying, "Oh, that's absolutely fine. That's kind of quite common that someone will go for a second option," and another doctor say that's never good, and that could be the sign of something quite sinister, which doesn't fill me with too much hope. But obviously, again, Chris Haynes said during the Lakers game that he, not Chris Haynes, I can't remember who it was now, said that there's a good chance there's hope that he'll be back this season, which I didn't like. When we've always kind of banked that he's going to be back after the All-Star break. But yeah, I think we can't rely on waiting it out and hoping that Joe Harris is going to come back, because I don't know if it's a guarantee. And I think there is probably a few options out there that we can potentially make a move for. We've heard talk of Robert Covington, we've heard talk of Gary Harris, we've heard talk of Terence Ross, and most recently, obviously, Dennis Schroeder is
Serge Ibaka. I heard today.
Serge Ibaka is available. Yeah, Clippers are looking like they're just up for selling anyone. So I would be absolutely shocked if it gets to the 10th and the Nets haven't at least made a minor move, because I think they'll at least want to show some form of kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, urgency to impress James Harden. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
So a player that came to mind and didn't come to my mind when we were discussing a former Nets player you'd bring back, but today there was the reports coming out about Spencer Dinwiddie not being wanted by his Wizards teammates. Now, I don't know if we can create a package and use trade exceptions to bring him back. And yes, he doesn't play the same position as Joe Harris, but think how many times Spencer was able to bail us out, being that kind of just other guy in the Nets. He wasn't that star. He never was the star. Yet he'd somehow always deliver. He'd come up with big games. He'd be able to sink threes, which would certainly solve the problem with Joe Harris being out. So yeah, I don't know how possible that is. Some of the names you mentioned are certainly very appealing. But yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie, kind of kicking myself I never brought him up when we were discussing bringing back former Nets, because we could certainly do with a guard like that who can just kind of step up when the main guy's out.
Yeah, Spencer to come back on his own trade exception would be hilarious. And we always said he'd win 6th man of the year for the Nets with the big 3. So, he can come back and rescue us again. I would be very much in favor of that. But yeah, big up Peter from, I'm assuming it's Peter out of the 2 of you from Only Nets Fan pod for coming through. But that's everything. That's all we've got on the docket for today. We've been going over just over an hour. And yeah, all aboard. You're probably listening. If you're not watching us live, you are probably listening to this post Suns game. So we were discussing that And much more next week. Sorry. My thanks as ever to Aidan and Cammy, and for you guys for listening and watching along with us. If you like what we do, then the best way that you can help us out is to like, rate, review the podcast, subscribe to us on YouTube, and share this episode on social media. Any help we can get to grow our audience would be much appreciated. You can also support us by treating yourself to some merch, which you'll find a link to our store in our Twitter bio. And as I say, that's it. We'll see you next week for another episode. Take it easy.